Hi, I'm Jerry from PressureWasher.net, manufacturer of Bulldog Pro pressure washers and Sirocco vacuums. We're going to talk about troubleshooting an engine quickly. Let's say it turns over. The engine turns over when you turn the key to the start switch, start position, but it just doesn't want to run. Okay, verifying that you have ignition is not as easy as verifying that you have fuel. When you are going to be troubleshooting an engine, one of the first things that you want to do, just in case it's the cause of this effect, you want to take the air filter out. Take the air filter out, put it out of the way, set it someplace where you'll, don't forget to put it back on again, but do your troubleshooting without the air filter. If you've got an engine that just won't even try to start, then if you take some carburetor cleaner and spray a little bit of carburetor cleaner at the carburetor while you're turning where you're turning the engine over, if it decides it wants to start or try to start, and guess what? It needs fuel. You've got a fuel supply problem. If that doesn't have any effect on it, then you probably have an ignition problem. Okay? So if on a V-twin, if you've got an ignition problem, it's probably going to be one side or the other, unless you've got low oil, and the low oil shutdown is keeping you from having your ignition. All right, but assuming that you've checked the oil and the oil's good, and the low oil switch isn't the problem, and on that note, I should say, come over here to the oil switch and disconnect the wire. Look over my shoulder here. Right here is the low oil switch on a Briggs & Stratton Vanguard. On the Kohler, it's underneath the engine, so it's a little bit more difficult to get to. But this one, you can just pull it real quick. Let's get it out of the way for the moment. Don't forget that you've taken it loose, but now we don't have the oil switch influenced in the problem. So now what we'll do is we'll spray a little bit of carburetor cleaner and see if that allows the engine to start running. If it does, then it was your low oil switch, or you're still looking for an ignition problem. So yeah, the first thing to verify is whether it just is looking for fuel or not. And carburetor cleaner is your best friend for quick troubleshooting. Don't use engine starting fluid. That's for diesel engines. A lot of people use it on gasoline engines, but it's really hard on those engines. I mean, just the knocking the sound that it makes will indicate that it's not good for the engine. Just use carb cleaner. The aerosol in carb cleaner is, of course, the solvent itself is combustible, and the propane propellant is obviously combustible. It'll run on the propane propellant. In fact, if you have an aerosol of just about any other type that won't make a mess out of what you're spraying it at, then like bug spray. Bug spray actually has propane propellant, and your engine's going to smell bad for a few minutes, but you can let the propane help you to do your troubleshooting real quick if you have to use bug spray. All right, so verifying that it does or doesn't want fuel, verify that it is not the low oil switch, verifying that you do have a good fuse putting power to your ignition switch, because a lot of these V-twin engines especially have a fuel solenoid, and if that solenoid's not going on, then of course you're not going to have fuel getting into the carburetor, so it'll act like it wants fuel. All right, so if you've verified that you've got voltage going up to the fuel solenoid, and on this one it's underneath the carburetor, on both of these actually, and on Honda engines the solenoid is underneath the carburetor. If you can find that wire and verify that it's getting power, and I'll mention Honda again. Honda, their newer engines have smaller solenoids, so they're getting sticky easier. So you might have power at the fuel solenoid, but the solenoid isn't actually opening. A little bit of bad gas is all it takes to keep those things from opening. That's the most common problems on Honda engines right now, is that solenoid gets stuck. I've also caught a couple of these guys, the Briggs engines, getting stuck just from the bad fuel that we have in California here. It's mostly alcohol and additives. It's not really gasoline. That's why our gas stations smell like alcohol and everybody else's smells like oil. Go figure. Anyway, so troubleshooting, you know, make sure that you've got a good fuel supply if you're looking for more fuel. You know, if the carburetor cleaner wants to make it start and run, then you know you're looking for a fuel source problem. And I'll also say, while I'm showing you this vertical version engine system, that some of these things get a little finicky on sucking fuel uphill, especially from a distance. This one is sucking fuel from about 8 feet away, so we've put a fuel pump on the fuel cell. I've got a fuel switch right here which turns on the 12-volt fuel pump and pumps fuel to both of these engines, so we're not concerned about finicky fuel pumps. Okay, so we're boosting the fuel to each of these machines, making it easier for them to run whether the fuel tank is low, whether it's far away or not, or multiple engines running on the same line. And on that note, from that fuel cell over there, we've got 3/8 fuel line coming over here to a junction where we've split off to 2 1/4-inch lines. So even with the fuel pump, we're delivering volume, not just pressure. So that's the easy way to troubleshoot these engines. That's where to start. If you have a more technical problem than what we've discussed, then it's time to make a phone call. Look in your operator's manuals. There's a lot of troubleshooting information in there, especially on fuel-injected engines. This one is a fuel-injected engine. Some of them are self-diagnosing. Take a look at your manual. Call us if you got questions. Go to pressurewasher.net when you need results.